I'm going to skip ahead a little bit so that we can get through the majority here. My next question is, where was I? We're now facing global ecological problems in the face of globalization, capitalism, industrialism, environmental issues such as global warming, mass bird die-offs, melting polar ice caps, toxification of pretty much everything. And we may be, that will be threatening to change the way of life as we know it. So I'm wondering I'll start with you this time because Matt just spoke, what you think that primitivism, like obviously it has something to offer in the way of people defending the trees being cut right now, and if it was on a global scale it would be very obviously, well, there wouldn't be industrialism then. But what do you see primitivism offering in the long term as a way of being able to organize against such kinds of global issues like this?
Well, it's funny, and I include myself here, I think it's funny how often we sort of forget that what's upon us right now. This is happening right now, those things you mentioned and more. And one datum that's, I think, unassailable, but doesn't ever enter into the thing is that the global warming is an exact measure of aggregate industrialism. In other words, measurably visible, at least significantly measurable, at the same time the Industrial Revolution began about 200 years ago. That's when you started being able to measure the temperature upticks. I mean, actually some people have said it started with settled villages and cities at the beginning of domesticated life on the eve of civilization. But that still was very, very minor. But then it really became more significant, and again, an exact correspondence. So to me, it's kind of obvious so you remove the industrialization, you remove the problem, which is exactly what we want. I mean, that's simple. Not so simple to do, and not so simple everybody's going to agree with that or try to figure out how that could happen and everything, but there it is. It's just that simple. And when you see what's going on in China and in India, I mean, it's just massive. You've seen the movie Avatar, by the way. That's India. They're burning the villages. They're just going to snuff anybody who gets in the way of building car plants and steel plants. They're building cars by that's what's going on. And there are people who have moved away from simple activism and Maoism or what have you to confront this. That's driving the whole thing, and there's, it's that simple. In the world system, these countries have to compete as the whole thing is presently constituted. We can't sit here and say, oh, we shouldn't do that. Well, yeah, they shouldn't do that. They have a right, every nation has the right to do this, right? Well, every nation has the right to suicide, that's the other way to put it. But again, they're not doing it just to be nasty. I mean, they're doing it because of the whole way the setup is. Otherwise so I think and you mentioned tree sitters. I mean, I don't think I haven't seen too many leftists defending the forest, actually. And, at any level you want, that's, people are fighting, obviously including tons of people who never heard the word primitivism or never used that word. That's fine, of course. But they're fighting progress, and that's a kindred spirit. It's not accepting, oh, we just let it roll. No, better not.
Okay, Matt, both on Turtle Island and throughout the rest of the planet, many people have lived semi-nomadic or nomadic ways. I wonder, is it perhaps the idea of permanent human settlements that's the cause of many of the problems that we're facing today?
Wow. No, I mean that would not be what I would point to. No, and again, I would hasten to point out that that it's this may have set up a place of departure right off the very beginning, but my comments are based on the idea that of of not being willing to accept or to brook the idea of a mass die-off or a mass reduction of population in some other way that I can't think of. And so the idea of 7 billion people living nomadically that doesn't enter my mind. No. So no, the question is sure. I mean, possibly, if 1 billion people could live nomadically, or I don't know, whatever a good number is. That's an interesting thought, but not one that makes a lot of sense to me.
Can I ask each about 2 more questions, and we'll open it up from there?
Yeah, we're close. We're getting tight, my friend.
Okay, so John, one of the questions that I was asked the other day actually by a friend was, I have a friend who has MS that's in a wheelchair, and she is a person who without wheelchair or without medications would very likely be dead. And so she takes a big issue with primitivism. She sees it as essentially, if we promote this, we're promoting my death. How do you respond to that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's probably the bottom line thing. We got into this just a little bit last night, I guess, but it's not wanting or somehow seeing just pulling the plug. I mean, that would be completely crazy. That would be genocidal. But some kind of process involving, I would guess, kind of something like intermediate technologies that, the mention of, for example, you can generate electricity from a bicycle. You see these people who get on and they're generating electricity, like the generator on a bike, for a light. In other words, it doesn't require a worldwide grid to power some things, and that's a tough one though. I mean, but we could also enter that into the picture where these things start. That some of these things just didn't exist, and they will keep on existing with the massive pollution, what's happening with the water and everything else. And for example, there wasn't any cancer before domestication. There were no infectious or degenerative diseases. That sounds like a kind of wild thing to say, but there's quite a literature on that. Because people didn't do drudge work and they lived dispersed enough. That's I guess maybe that's another thing to consider in terms of densifying things. That's when you incubate plague and virtually every other infectious disease. If you're living in a more decentralized way, and ultimately this would be not tomorrow, of course, but those things don't have a host. They cannot develop as they can in the city. That didn't happen before cities or before domestication, as the case may be. So I'm just saying that we have always the promise of technological answer, but it's the technological movement that has created the problems almost across the board. So that's kind of a no-win deal. You can keep creating the problems, and then your answer is really to create more problems. I mean, just look at the record. It just hasn't worked. These promises, all the way through, the promises of technology, the promises of enlightenment, the promises of civilization, how's it all working out? I mean, it's just, you just check it out, just empirically, just go down the list. And you come to a conclusion that all of this shit is really suicidal. It's punishing people. I don't think that, well, maybe I should just stop there, but I could go back to, well, I'll just leave it at this.